Good evening, everybody. Welcome. This is the second lecture on time-lapse wisdom as a tool for young people. And this evening we are going to discuss how to discover your unique task in life. And let's begin this talk with a perhaps bold statement, but we say everyone has a unique task in life. And that unique task comes from the unique character that everyone is. As a result, one also lives in unique circumstances. Circumstances which, although similar to those of others, are always slightly different because one's character is also slightly different. And we're going to try to explain that in this lecture. But first we want to clear up a possible misunderstanding. There are those who speak of a unique task in life and see it as if that task were imposed by someone else, as if a god or a supreme being, whatever image one has of it, has given that task. Just as a parent or a teacher or a boss can set you up with a task. We don't see it that way. So where did that task come from? Who has given you that task? Yes, that unique task. For an answer, therefore, we must dwell on some of the core ideas of the Theosophical, some of the jewels of wisdom, as we call them. There are seven jewels of wisdom, and you see them on the sheet. Cyclicity. In human life, it manifests itself, for instance, as reincarnation or sleeping and be awake. Karma, the law of cause and effect. Hierarchies, self-becoming, progressive evolution or the increasing of one's consciousness. Two paths, the motive. Why do you want to grow in consciousness for yourself or for the benefit of all? And knowing the self, knowing the core of everything. We will dwell especially on jewels 1, 2 and 4, although we certainly need the others as well, to explain what your unique task is. Well, on the basis of the first two jewels, cyclicity or reincarnation and karma, you can say that we lived many times. We are like an eternal pilgrim going from life to life, alternating periods of activity with those of rest, the rest period of death. Life always goes on, sometimes in manifested form, we call it life, and sometimes in unmanifested form, and that is called death. In each new life, we face the causes that we created in a previous life. We reap what we saw. Karma, cause and effect. I'm sure you all know it. That is an iron law, karma. It applies to everything. Without that law, there would be no physics. There would be no laws in the cosmos. And that same law applies equally to our mind, our thinking and our actions. Every thought and action, therefore, causes a seed that one day will arise, a cause that must one day lead to consequences. So, you are born into a time and a country and a city with parents in circumstances, character, that are consequences of past lives, consequences of thoughts and actions of previous lives. Just as you wake up every morning with a character and in circumstances that are the consequences of what you did the day before, or rather, the days before. Didn't you get your work done yesterday? Then today you have an extra task. Did you go ahead at work and you have already finished a part of a job that was actually scheduled for today? Then today will be a quiet day. And this may be a simple example, but it applies equally to your relations to people and anything at all in life. If you have been unkind to your neighbor, then you have actually set yourself the task to restore the imbalance and bring the harmony that you yourself have caused back into balance. Life itself will impose that task on you. There is a well-known saying in Theosophy regarding karma, and that is that you are your own karma. You are your own causes and you will be your own consequences. You can never escape from yourself. So if you link this to the title, your unique task in the world, then you are the employer of that task. You are your own chief. You have placed yourself in front of a number of things that have come directly from your past and which you have to work out and bring to perfection, as much as you can, of course. Now, that unique task comes from the unique character that you have made for yourself. For that character is not a result of heredity or any external factor whatsoever. Your character is the result of yourself, of your own thinking and acting. Let's try to explain that. Your character is actually the habit patterns that you have built. And those habit patterns are the accumulated actions that you have done and that you perform over and over again. And what underlies an action? A thought. So thoughts are the basis of your character. If you know that thoughts, like everything else in nature, are living beings, which, like all living beings, are subject to the law of cycles, the first jewel of wisdom, then you see that ever recurring thoughts that you think form the basis of your character. So you saw a thought and you reap an action. You saw an action and you reap a habit. And you saw a habit and you reap a character. And to be clear, thoughts are very unself-conscious living beings. They are at the bottom of the hierarchy of consciousness, but they are nonetheless living and growing entities. So, it is your thoughts that determine your character. And that character is attracted, according to the karmic law, to those circumstances, to that family, and so on, where it can become itself, where it can be discharged of its duty, which, on the basis of its own past, it has imposed upon itself. So, in other words, you saw a character and you reap a task. You see, that character is never formed in isolation. It comes into being in conjunction and in cooperation with countless other beings. In the first place, of course, with humans, your family, your friends, perhaps also enemies, at least people with whom you are not immediately in a sympathetic relationship. You enter into a relationship with all these men and all these women, a relationship that is forged on the basis of the thoughts that you have about them. In fact, you also forge a relationship with countless other living beings, with the cells that compose your body, with the atoms that compose those cells, with the thoughts you think. Your character, in short, is shaped by the choices you make, but always in collaboration with countless other living beings. And it is that character that in a new reincarnation manifests itself again. It's like a magnet, as we said in the previous lecture. That character is a magnet. It is an attracting and repelling power station that attracts all those beings again So in each new life, you come into contact again with all those with whom you had a relationship in previous lives, a relationship based on sympathy or antipathy. And during the period of death, all the material-oriented tendencies of a character, say the selfish desires, the personal feelings, the vital impulses, everything in which the personal I, the personal ego was central, are temporarily absent. You shake off those lower elements when you die. Only the higher aspects of the character, you could call it the character with a capital C, tastes the blissful peace of death, weaves in the lessons and the conclusions from the experience of the previous life, and then comes back to earth refreshed and gathers his lower elements again. As a magnet attracts iron, so attracts that character, the human being who always awakens from what we call death, his inclinations, his desires, his feelings again. And during the process of growing up, a period of about 21 years, all those aspects, high and low, personal and superpersonal, will become active again. And that, of course, always takes place in relation to others, without whom those aspects could never have come into being. So the magnet that we are attracts the qualities and the abilities from past lives and attracts the people with whom it has a characteristic similarity. Feelings of love, of hate, for example, could never have arisen if there were no other humans or other beings towards whom those feelings would have been directed. So, what is our character? Our character is the sum total of all the traits developed in all past lives and stored in the abiding or in the reincarnating part of our consciousness. And from it come the motives, intelligence, moral impulses, faculties, properties that we have developed. And on the basis of this character, the instrument is formed, the mask, the personality, behind which the true human being, the character, is hidden. And this character is therefore the leading factor in shaping the new personality. If you put it in a diagram, then you see that the total human being consists of a spirit, we call it the monad or the immortal core, a soul, the intermediate nature, and a vehicle, a body. The spirit is composed of Atman, our deepest self, the inner God, Buddhi, the illuminating principle. So Atman and Buddhi form the spirit side of our consciousness. Our real character is found in the soul. It's our intermediate nature, the part within us that reincarnates. But our soul is composite as well. There is a higher manas, a higher mind, the higher thinking, and a lower manas, the lower mind. The higher mind, the higher manas, is the super-personal part within our soul. It's not I-orientated. It is the part within us that survives death. The lower manas is the personality. It is the I am I consciousness. And the whole purpose of education, as we tried to make clear 2 weeks ago, is that the higher manas, or the reincarnating ego, the real human being, the real character that we are, is called out, is lured outward, so to speak. Or if you examine your own character and the character of other people from the past or the present, then you will find that they always have something unique. Of course, those thoughts that you think are often similar to those of others, but they will always have something, a certain color, nuance, a tone, that makes them stand out from others. Everyone has a unique voice. Everyone has their own fingerprint. Everyone has, or rather is, a unique character. And therefore, a character is the collective peculiarities or characteristics by which a human being is distinguished from other human beings. No two humans are identical. Even identical twins, who are actually clones of each other and have the same DNA, and you see that DNA never defines who you are, even such identical twins differ from each other. If two humans were identical to each other, then they would not be two humans, but only one. If even each leaf on a tree differs from another, if no two blades of grass are the same, could two humans be identical to each other? No, each human is unique. Well, this uniqueness of every human being comes out strongly in the fourth jewel of wisdom, Swabhãva. You see, Swabhãva is the middle one of the 7 jewels. You cannot get a good understanding of it if you haven't understood the first 3 jewels to some extent, and especially reincarnation and karma. Swabhãva means self-becoming. It's a concept that is quite easy to understand on the one hand, but it also has a very, very profound meaning. Self-becoming means that in every manifestation, and that is in every new life, a being can become nothing but itself. It becomes exactly what it has made of itself. It has exactly those abilities, those qualities, those characteristics, and also those flaws and shortcomings which it created in previous lives. No one becomes more than what they are, but nobody becomes less than what they are. You are always exactly the end product of what you have made of yourself. So, if in this life you are a math whiz from early age, and in gym class you are a jackass, and whether you like it or not, you created it yourself that way. Maybe you did it unconsciously, but no one but yourself is responsible for what you are. Swabhãva, therefore, can also be called self-generation. You have conceived yourself. You are the child of yourself. You are your own parents. That's the idea. And if you take in consideration the axiom of thought, action, habit, character, then you understand that a person is never anything more than what their thoughts have made of them. That is the first meaning of Swabhãva. But this Sanskrit word means something more. The word becoming, of self-becoming, can also be understood in the sense of growing out, become into something. In other words, we are the child of our own higher nature. Every being exists because of the fact that it is a spiritual core, a divine spiritual core, a spark of eternity, a monad. In this context, one may speak of Paramatman or Atman or the Supreme Self, or the source from which we spring. Give that source a name. Paramatman, the divine, the inner God, the monad. Names are not important. But do know, realize intuitively that there is a deepest core within us. And that deepest core, let's call it the monad for convenience, emits a ray, emits a vehicle, an instrument with which and through which that monad works. That monad is thus the background, the basis of every being. So every being brings out what it is inwardly, what it is within itself. Each being is the product of its own higher nature. Does that monad manifest itself completely? No, of course not. The monad is an essentially boundless reservoir of consciousness. It has everything in it that exists in boundlessness. The monad, however, constantly expresses more of itself, becomes in its instrument, in its vehicle, more and more what it is internally. That is the second meaning of Swabhãva, that we bring forth more and more of our inner nature, that we become more and more what we really are. As the word self-becoming indicates, we are talking about a continuous process. We are becoming ever more and more of what we are. When you go to sleep tonight, then you are a different self than when you got up this morning. Perhaps you have changed just a little bit, so that the outside world notices nothing of it. Yes, maybe even you don't see it either. But every new thought, every new experience of something that you may have experienced many, many times before, makes you change a little bit. If we live self-consciously, especially if we are consciously trying to develop spirituality, we will more quickly activate and become more of our higher nature than if we let ourselves drift on the waves of events. But even then, we will change, albeit slowly, and become more and more what we are internally. And that actually applies not only to humans or animals or plants, but also civilizations, countries, cities, the Theosophical Society, each lodge of the Theosophical Society, and so on and so on. They all have their special characteristic which distinguish them from others. No fixed characteristic, because civilization, organizations, countries also change, grow as they go along. Each has or is its own Swabhãva. And this could be called the third meaning of Swabhãva, which is that every being, or an association of beings, has its own Swabhãva, its own essential nature by which it is distinguished from others. It is the essential individuality of each monad with its own characteristics, its own qualities, that by the process of self-realization expresses itself in vehicles. And when I speak of vehicles, I don't mean just the physical body, but in fact also the human being as a manifested being. So, as human beings living on this earth, we are the expression of our most essential individuality, our Swabhãva, so that we are always different from others and have our own most specific characteristic that makes us different from others. In the following parts of the lecture after the break, we hope to show that the teaching of Swabhãva has everything to do with discovering your unique task in life. But first we have a 3 minutes break in which you can ask your questions using email, or you can use our chat function, and after that break we'll try to answer these questions, and then we have part 2 of the lecture. So see you in 3 minutes.